Anyone who's listened to this On the Mark podcast for any length of time will hear me preaching about putting and the low hanging fruit. Well, in my hand here, I've got a really cool idea, and we have the inventor slash originator slash boss of Spoiler Golf, Dan Landman. Welcome to our show. How are you?
Appreciate it. I'm doing great. It's really nice to be here, Mark. This is fun.
Yeah, okay. For the folks listening on audio, you need to go to YouTube to check this out because I'm holding in my hand the Spoiler OG. Um, and it's got some really cool face technology, and you need to see it to believe it. In fact, I just got home from the Masters, and mine was waiting in the mail for me. Dan, putting to me is so important. This is, I have not seen anything like it before. So share with us the inspiration for this putter style, please.
Yeah, sure. No problem. So it really started, I was playing golf with my dad around COVID times, and he had kind of given up on his putter and was putting with a wedge.
Okay.
And I think if you're an avid golfer or you like to tinker with your putting or practice your putting, most of us have put a wedge in our hand at times to try and work on quieting our wrist down, having good tempo in the stroke, making sure we have proper contact location right on the equator of the ball. I mean, using a wedge and hitting it with the leading edge of the wedge is a wonderful way to figure out where your stroke is. Now, it's a little bit difficult to constantly, with that tiny leading edge, hit
Mm-hmm.
it perfectly in the equator of the ball.
Yeah.
So, we set out basically to design some of that leading edge technology into the face of a putter because as we were putting, we realized the ball was rolling with more forward roll and earlier in the putt than it would with our traditional flat face putter because, right, a flat face putter has loft on it, which
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
thereby loft adds backspin. That's how it shoots it into the air. So, when we started putting with wedge, we were like, wow, this is rolling really, really, really well. So that's why then we decided to say, why has no one put this type of technology or this type of face on the front of a putter? Because we think that people can have a more predictable distance control, better start line accuracy, and truly just enjoy putting again and really experience pure roll if they were using a different type of technology than our traditional flat face putters out there.
Two questions pop out of this. Are you
Yeah.
an engineer by trade?
Oh, not at all. This was all, so it's like, I mean, this is all trial and error, iterative process. I mean, it took us about 3 years because it was, all right, hey, there's an idea. Let's run to the store and went out to Walmart. This was during COVID and ran out to Walmart, had Play-Doh and Model Magic, and we just started putting things together, right? And then we got to a point where it's like, okay, we need something we can actually play. We hooked up with an industrial designer once we
Mm-hmm.
had an idea of what the putter could look like, and went through multiple prototypes. But yeah, no engineering trade. We teamed up with someone who understood engineering, but all of this really came from just trial and error and figuring out why we think the ball rolls better, right? Coming off the leading edge of a wedge when struck properly versus conventional putter.
Okay, well, you've sort of teed us up a bit. Let's get to know Dan for our global audience before we dive further into this. Tell us about you and how you came to where you are. Well, you've told us the COVID story, but I mean, golfer, competitive golfer. Tell us about you.
So golfer, yes, right. Avid golfer. I didn't really start until kind of my senior year in high school, and then I
Okay.
just, like many people, right, got the bug and I was hooked. After college, I played right through college, not at college, but just played golf, just for fun, right, as a hobby. And I got pretty good at golf pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So after college, I took a year off, just playing amateur events, working on my game, working odd jobs on the side, just trying to see, hey, is this something I could do? I always wanted, right at that time, I wanted to be a pro golfer. And then it was
Right.
like, so what am I at that age after college? 21, 22, right? But I was playing amateur events and right, I'm 40 now. So that was almost 20 years ago. And the 15-year-old kids were just, still bombing it by me, right? They're hitting 8 irons in the greens or I'm hitting 4 or 5 irons. So I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. So then it was still just for fun, right? I don't come from the golf industry. I was actually in staffing and recruiting for a long time. So I come from a corporate kind of environment, but I've been involved with many startups along the way as well.
All right.
And so when we had the opportunity to kind of jump into this, when my dad and I came up with the idea, it was like, all right, I love golf. I still right play all of the time. And the idea, the funny part is I'm the horrible putter, right? Which I think probably most of us are. And if you watched the Masters yesterday, it's like it's not easy, right? It is much easier almost to hit an 8 iron to 8 feet from the pin than to make that 8 foot putt, right? And so it was always something that I was working on. I was passionate about. I always tried to get better, which is, using the wedge for drills and things. And so now it's like we want to try and just help people kind of experience pure roll. Like there's a better way to putt the ball. And I don't think a lot of people actually truly understand like how putting works, right? Or how the ball rolls after you hit the putt.
Well, we had recently had a guest on the show. His name is Bev Wadden. And Bev is a respected golf teacher who's also like a mathematician sort of a guy. And he's done tons of research on the roll of the ball off the putter. It's kind of his thing. And he's talked about the skid phase of the putt and the roll phase. And he did research too, which we thought was interesting. So we featured this about practicing on synthetic surfaces versus on grass, and how the ball rolls quicker on synthetic as opposed to real grass.
Mhm.
And as a result, if you're practicing on, and I'll paraphrase here, this, go and listen to the show if you want. If you're practicing on some synthetic green, it's not necessarily exactly the same as on grass. It goes without saying, but the ball performs differently too. And so I want to talk about this face technology in a second, because here you guarantee that the forward roll revs per minute are higher.
Mhm. Yes,
The forward roll in relation to the side spin is greater,
correct.
and there's actually less side spinning off this face. So again, was this because you hit a wedge in the equator of the ball and go, oh my gosh? Or was it actually, well, I did this, and then it kind of probed your thinking some into why that was happening?
A little bit of both, but it was mainly, hey, putting with the wedge, we could see and feel a distinct difference in the ball roll. And now,
Mm-hmm.
like if you put a spoiler in someone's hands and they putt with it versus they'll be, oh my God, that's surprisingly solid. And yes, that feels different. So you can actually just see it. So everything we did is truly like anecdotal. And then we went and kind of backed into the science. So we worked with some putter fitters who have Quintic ball roll and have, everything set up for that so that we could truly measure the ball roll versus conventional putters to say, hey, is this just, something that we believe and, so we've got some confirmation bias, or is there, real science behind it? Turns out there is real science behind it. And we don't promote a whole lot of that on the website. We do a little bit, but I think it's hard for the average golfer, gets lost in these numbers. And going back to what I said earlier is I don't think a lot of people really understand what happens when you're putting a ball. I think you just aim up, hit it, and it goes where it goes. But it's like there's a million factors that go into that, like how much shafting you have, what loft you're applying at the time of impact, your angle of attack coming in and out of the ball. So there's a lot. There's the grass, like you're talking about, the different surfaces you're on. There's a lot of things that go into what's going to make actually a good putt.
Well, audio listeners, I'm showing on YouTube now. I'm holding the face up to the video screen so you can see. And it's a mallet style putter. It's really pretty. It's all this. My one's all in black and red, so it's kind of cool, tigerish.
That's the new stealth model that just came out this
So,
year. Last year we only had the silver model, but we're already sold out of that one, so we got more on the way.
so and here's the close up of the face. And the face, I would say, if I'm working in inches from top to bottom, it's about a third of an inch.
Yeah.
Give me the dimensions of the
So the
face.
diameter of that is about 8 millimeters. So
Okay.
if that were you're going to fill out the full curve, you're going to have 8 millimeter diameter, and then when the blade comes out, we're actually going to have a 10 millimeter diameter on that.
So what Dan is speaking of, folks, is the face is actually rounded, and it's 8 millimeters from top to bottom, and it's grooved, and there's an alignment line on the top. So here's my question, because you talked about shaft lean. If there's a little shaft lean forward, and you still have the arc of the putter land in the right place, you'll still make decent contact.
That's right.
Where if you have a little backward shaft lean and the putter lands in the right place, pendulum style, you'll still make decent contact.
That's right.
Obviously, anything excessive or any bad landing spots, it's going to show you up. So there's a multi-pronged question here to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the perfect putting training aid for landing your putting stroke, the arc in the correct place in relation to the ball.
That's right.
It's going to show you up pretty fast, I feel like, over long range putts. If your putting stroke is kind of wonky,
100%.
So the
Yeah,
teacher in me is going, dang, man, I finally found a way to teach people how to make a stroke that lands in the right place with this thing.
yeah, yeah.
But still, you can go and play with this because it's conforming, correct?
That's right. Yeah. And so when we developed it, there was, we didn't just do this kind of, behind closed doors. I mean, we were talking with PGA players, Corn Ferry players, LPGA players, DP World Tour players, some of the best coaches, of PGA of America. We were talking to as many people as we could as we put this in their hand. I mean, we worked with Lauren Roberts for a long time, getting
He's a
feedback.
master. Uh-huh.
He's a decent putter, right? Maybe top 10 ever. And so we were talking with everyone, just trying to figure out, what works and why people like it. And we got a lot of feedback, right? That there's a great training aid. And we agree that it does. It's like a two-pronged, like wonderful club because one, it can help you become a better and more efficient putter, right? It can really show you where you have deficiencies in your putting stroke.
Mhm.
But then also, when used properly, you have the relative advantage of better ball roll and you can use it and game it, like you said, it's USGA conforming. So when we set out, it was, we don't want it to be a training aid, right? If people want to use it for a training aid, absolutely, by all means, because at the end of the day, our whole brand, we're trying to just help people experience pure roll on the greens. I don't care if it's because people use it as a training aid or if they're just gaming it when they go play, or if they just use this and then they go game, another putter when they actually go play. As long as we're helping people get better at putting, we're happy. But it is fully USGA conforming, so it's meant to be a gamer. But we have Joe, I don't know if you know Joe Hallett. He was
Yes.
2024 PGA Teacher of the Year. So he joined us probably 8 months ago, 9 months ago or so. We put this in his hands, and it was the same thing. He was like, finally, he's like, I have people use a wedge all the time, but the problem is then you put a putter back in your hands. It doesn't look or
It is
feel like
different.
a putter, but this still does all the same things. And so his idea is, look, I'm putting this in people's hands, and we've had it in a lot of LPGA players' hands, and some that have won majors before have now put it in their bag. And it's, if you're making putts on the practice green with it, throw it in the bag and go play with it.
I'm so proud of you and I'm so thankful for you because I feel like I'm one of the lone voices in, broadcast and also golf instruction in the era in which we find ourselves, where it's about speed and power. And everyone's like, ball speed, ball speed, ball speed. And I'm like, yeah, ball speed amounts to a hill of beans if you can't get the thing going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And as we've seen with a number of the top players in our game, you can drive it 350, but if you miss a putt when it means something, that doesn't really add up too much, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right. Right. It's what, 40, 45%, of your strokes are
yeah,
with one single club, but yet we put all the emphasis on that one driver that we hit 14 times around, maybe. It doesn't make sense.
let's talk about this a little bit because here recently, Rory finally broke through and won the Masters and completed the career Grand Slam, and it was emotional. And I, for one, saw how being on the call, how golf is more than just physical. Golf is very mental as well as we were coming down the stretch there. And he had that putt to win from a few feet right to left, kind of a real right-hander's look. If there's no pressure, he'd probably making that. But it's to win the Masters, to complete the career Grand Slam. This felt like 12 feet, I'm sure, too.
I felt the pressure. I'm sure you felt it
Like,
too. Even on the
Jesus, yeah,
broadcast, like I
felt,
felt the pressure.
I felt nauseous at the time. Anyhow,
Oh,
I digress. And Rory's always had a tendency for the blade, if you're watching me on YouTube, for the blade to travel back. And then on the way through, it's like he creates an ascending strike on the ball. And sometimes, and he's coach Brad Faxon has talked to him about this, where he gets excessively upward through contact. It
mhm.
creates topspin if you get it just right, or it gets the ball rolling quicker, let me say, because a ball rolling end over end does have topspin on it. But he tends every so often when the pressure's up to get too vertical too early. And that putt to win, it's like he hit well above the equator of the golf
Very
ball.
much.
It was when I saw the images, I was like, whoa. I mean, he almost whiffed the thing. Okay.
Yep.
Now, if he does that with this, he's going to
Oh,
hit the
you'll
bottom.
know.
He's going to hit the bottom of the putter. So, in other words, I'm saying this all to go. Um, I've always preached as a teacher that putting is as good as your green reading, but your green reading is as good as you starting the ball on the intended line with the right speed.
No doubt.
If you hit the ball flush, then you're going to be on your way because the athlete sensors break, and then your body responds to that. So with this OG, with this spoiler OG,
Yep.
you apply this thing probably to the back of the ball, you're hitting it flush every single time. So when you get used to this and when you do it properly, you're going to really get better from lag range.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And as a result, then you're going to have yourself fewer of those sort of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 footers
Right.
after you've hit a poor putt from distance. Is that what you've experienced?
That's exactly what we've experienced. Yes. And it's, even when, we're only direct to consumer right now, we do everything online, right? Sell just through the website. So, a lot of our feedback comes through emails or reviews or whatnot. The only time we'll run into real issues with it is exactly what you're talking about too, is that a lot of players will come through and have the ascending kind of, angle of attack post impact. And I think a lot of that, one is they probably just don't know proper putting fundamentals, but two, they're trying to add topspin. And if you're trying, you just need to let the technology of the club do the work, but actually keep the head low coming through the ball so that you're making really good impact. So your impact ratio is higher, and then you're getting all that force into the back of the ball so that it can truly roll out. So I completely agree with you on that. And the cool part with our putter is that if you're not hitting it properly, you'll actually see the ball bounce up because it has a
The bevel
smaller
edge.
face. You
Yeah.
can actually have more acute angles of attack on the ball, and so it'll pop up a little bit. And if it's popping up, you can be like, all right, make a few minor adjustments until you get the ball rolling pure again. Where with a traditional flat face putter, it's only going to mask your improper putting technique. So you're not going to know why. You're just going to put some weird spin on the ball, and it's going to end up, 2 feet short and left of the hole. But you're going to think you read it wrong when really you just applied the wrong putting stroke to the ball.
You're preaching, Reverend Landman. I want to say this too, because my show exists to introduce bright minds and cool concepts to the world, because we want to help people to do golf better, right?
That's it.
And this, again, I'm about to go and try it when I'm done with my interview commitments today. As a teacher, I can put this in your hands and go, you just go and practice. And you are likely, and Colin Morikawa has been on the show and he's talked about, self-discovery, taking my lesson and go and making it my own.
Yeah.
And then out of there, creating a feel out of it. Because everyone, it's to take the cerebral and turn it into a feel that you can replicate. With this, the instant feedback you're going to get, and then you're on the green and you're not striking it properly, you make one or other fine adjustment just to hit more squarely, correctly in the back of the ball, you'll get the instant feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, like you say, putting, we can kind of whiff putts a little bit. And if the greens are fast, they get there.
Right.
All of a sudden, the fast green putter shows up on the slow stuff and he cannot play for flip. Here's how you fix your problem with this very club in my hand.
That's right. Yep. Yep. And the other cool part is that, when we designed it too, that we thought it would help people just kind of enhance their focus standing over the ball. Like you don't, I think the yips come from, I'm sure there's different theories, but it's just you get too involved in your stroke, right? And then you're thinking about stroke and you're trying to control the head versus just letting it flow. When you have a smaller face like this, it's plenty of face to get the ball rolling from any length putt. But all you have to do now is once you've practiced with it and understand how, to interact with the ball and make it right, optimize it for pure roll, is that you focus truly just on lining up and then putting a pure roll on the ball. And that's all we want people to focus on. And nobody wants to sit there and think about their stroke while they're putting. But if they can sit there, line up and go, all right, now I just want to put a good roll on this, that's all you're going to focus on. Now you've got this very simple focus and you can clear your mind of everything else and just let it roll at that point.
And folks, what Dan says there, if you're listening to golf jargon and you're listening to like most of the pundits and such and players, they'll talk about, being in the process. That's purely what process is. It's how you apply your club to the ball to get a desired result.
Yeah.
I do want to ask this because you said, and I can believe it, how with a face design of this golf club with a beveled edge, I want to talk about the grooves in a minute. With a beveled edge, how if you're overly wristy, the base of the arc will get inconsistent and contact on the ball will be, it'll wane. So here's my question is like, I'm assuming then for the person who has kind of a wristy sort of a stroke or a little yippy or not smooth or whatever, there will be a period of kind of getting used to the whole thing. Have you experienced that with the feedback you're getting?
There, yes, absolutely. And it's 100%, or not 100%, but I'll say most time it's with people who are very, very wristy. I mean, you'll see some amateurs, right, come back. I've seen amateurs literally get their wrist up to about waist high, right, with their putting stroke and
Right.
coming. And that's when we run into, right, some issues with the ball popping up and things. But part of, what we sell, and again, I'll go back to this, and I'm not trying to be annoying, but we just want people to experience pure roll however we can. Whenever anyone buys a putter, they can always, whenever they want, send in videos of them rolling, right? Spoiler. And we will analyze it, send feedback, tips, etc., specific to that individual video so that we can help them. And most of the time, right, there's kind of three things. It's keep the head low coming through. It's having a very, very patient, transition from backswing to downswing. And then finally, it's getting your wrist. It's not that you remove all risks, right? And I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but you can have a little bit, but it's quieting them down. You just don't want too much wrist action because it does. Then at the bottom of your arc, if you have too much wrist action, it's hard to figure out where that impact location is going to be on that ball.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this will allow you some wrist action, but at that moment of truth, you got to kind of catch stuff and organize it well enough.
Yep.
And here's my sort of personal anecdotes. Um, I didn't get many lessons as a kid. Now that I've been around the block teaching golf for a while, I've talked to a lot of great putters. But I remember as a kid, I learned, well, I didn't learn, I spent some time, 20 minutes or so, with a great Bobby Locke over in South Africa who
Oh
could
man.
hold the thing over peanut brittle from anywhere. And he had this sort of inside loopy stroke, used to putt with an old style mallet putter, multiple major champion. And every putt he hits, the blade would go in, it'll lift up a little bit, he'd strike more downward on the ball, and the thing would hug the ground like you couldn't believe. No bouncing ever. And this used to fascinate me because I'd always heard players, because I was coming up in the era of someone like a Faldo saying, well, create topspin and create a more ascending strike. And then the one day I spoke with Gary Player, and he was like, no, you got to strike more downward on the ball. If you strike downward, the ball travels better. That is the case with an iron. Think about it, because
Yeah.
there's some loft in it.
Right.
So there's a little loft in the putter. Well, not yours, but most putters.
Yeah. With most
So
putters.
I've always been more like the blade swings up in the backswing, then swings down. And the image I have for putters is like it's almost going down a ski jump and then travels low for a little while until it can't go low anymore. Then it ascends.
That's right.
So I don't mind a little wrist action. But once again, if you're using this, you'll learn to organize exactly when those wrists can hinge and unhinge, but when stuff has to stabilize through contact.
Yeah. And you know what? I've messed around with this putter, right? Obviously, kind of running this company and building this. So I'll mess around. Hey, what happens if I play it way back in my stance and like hitting
Right.
down hard times? Like I'll mess around with just like hitting 3 or 4 footers way off my back foot. And it's almost like you just hit down on the back of it and it just squirts right in the hole. And I think some of that and like, through science and some of our thesis too, when we built this and wanted 0 degrees of loft, right? One is so if you have a little bit of shaft lean, you're always applying 0 degrees of loft to the
Yeah.
to the ball. But that helps because now we're helping the ball interact with the surface earlier. So that's creating friction earlier in the putt. Once we can interact with and have friction earlier in the putt, that's going to allow, right, the ball to stop skidding, stop hopping, or stop having backspin earlier because the friction is going to stop it and get the ball rolling forward earlier in the putt, which is why we love the idea of 0 degrees of loft. And I know there's been a lot of talk, or not a lot. Whenever when we first started this, it was like you've got to hit the ball out of its own depression in the green, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I think wind moves balls on greens. I think greens are so very well manicured this day and age that the depression it sits in is not an issue. And if you look at, the last generation of putter lofts, like we've come down very steadily
Oh, yeah.
10 or 20 years. And now we're almost at, I think on average, just about 2 degrees, right?
Yeah,
But
do it.
it's coming down more and more and more. I'm sure there are some municipal courses out there where it's very shaggy and there's proper time to have, hey, I need to have like 3, 4, or 5 degrees putter loft on there.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think that there's a lot of advantage to being able to apply the exact same amount of loft every single time to the ball. Because if you just have 2 degrees of loft on your conventional putter, if you have a little too much forward shaft lean, now you're at 1 degree. If you don't have any, now you're at 3 degrees. And I don't know how you are consistent when you're applying different lofts to the ball at time of impact when you're putting.
Which makes sense with the rounded edge for the folks looking. You can see the front of the putter from top to bottom has got a little bulge, a little roll about it. On the face, I don't know if people can see, you can see there in the light that there are little grooves, and they're quite deep. It would be a milled face, I guess, would be the vernacular, but the grooves that you have on this milled area of the face
And that's actually cast. Those are cast, but it makes sense to say that they are milled. Some pieces of it are milled. That part is cast. Yeah.
So the purpose thereof is?
The purpose there, it was, again, going back to our times of literally just testing and messing around with different ideas. We had no grooves. We had smaller grooves, and then we had these, say, larger grooves on it. The performance was just more consistent with the grooves on it. We actually had higher forward roll with less grooves, but we didn't have as much consistency with it. So that's why we went with the grooves on there. So there's nothing more than that. And everything we did when we designed the OG is to try and pay a little bit of homage to a wedge, right? So like if you look at the top of it, you have the lines in there. Those are like loft lines. Again, that's where we came from with the grooves too. It was, all right, let's add a little bit of, loft lines on it, right? So we want people to say, hey, this came from putting with a wedge, right? That's the cool part of this, is that's where it came from. But it's actually a putter that can give you a relative advantage on the greens by providing a purer roll than anything else out there.
I can almost see, and this is where I'm looking forward to going to experiment, because, certain golfers who cool enough for themselves to not be embarrassed by stuff, folks that might use head covers for argument's sakes, they've got a chipper in the bag. The old chippers, right?
I love the chippers.
Yeah, those things are freaking money. More golfers should have a chipper in their bag where you can make a putt stroke.
Yeah,
and just elevate
that guy right there can do a little chipping too.
Because if you get the shaft,
it's fun.
You can double as a chipper here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm very excited to hear your feedback with it, because you can hit some. And I'll be honest, and this was a little bit more gimmicky, but I mean, because the putter kind of has some bounce on it, the way that we designed it.
Yeah.
I've hit it out of bunkers before, right? Just messing, and you can hit clean bunker shots with it. I've hit it out of the fairway, 100-yard shot, nice high draw with it. So, I mean, I'm not trying to sell it that way. I think some of this is we tend to get so focused on that there's only a correct way or a right way to do everything in golf, when really no one knows what the right way is, and it's just whatever works for you. And there's so much fun to be had playing this game that we kind of get lost in very, very often, because we think we should be making par, making that putter, just enjoy the game. Go have fun and hit some fun shots. And that's what I do with that a lot, because it's just, I have fun.
And for the folks, the top of the putter looks like that. It's cool. It's sort of a mallet style. There's a nice alignment line there that you can use as an alignment aid. And this stealth version is very cool. Black shaft. Again, I'm super excited. This to me, Dan, is you're looking outside the box, which I appreciate. But in the same way, and I will die on this hill, that there's nothing new under the sun. And really, no matter what the data and what people are hearing about this stuff, it's still just an interaction between a bat and a ball.
That's it.
Okay.
Simple. It's so simple.
And you're like, well, let's sort of push the edges a bit. And this, if nothing else, folks, is a fantastic training aid. I have one that's similar, that you see the hole in this, where it was a hole for a golf ball from way back in the day, called the Zen putter.
I know exactly what you're
that was about. You put the ball in the middle of it and you just roll the ball away. And to a certain extent, it wouldn't allow the blade to take off too much in the backswing, and you had to raise it up on the way through. But it would show you at least where the path of the stroke is. And I've had a lot of success with this. But here, the ball listens to the front of the club face.
Right.
And where the front of the club face strikes the ball in relation to the sweet spot, which strikes in relation to the angle of attack, where it strikes in relation to, where the face is pointing, and there's less roll of this thing side to side. It is dealing with exactly the issue that is required if you want to make putts when the pressure is up. I'm so on board with you.
I love it. That gets me very excited. I'm thrilled to hear that. It's we've been around now, literally launched last January, so this is just our second year, and we've had some great momentum, great feedback. We've got it in the hands of a few players. You know, just people haven't heard about us because we're bootstrapping this thing right now. And so this year we intend to get it out there, get it into more players' hands, and see what can happen. Because you are 100% right. Like we can talk about all the fundamentals of putting and a nice putting stroke and a good putting stroke, but at the end of the day, we're just rolling a ball.
Yeah.
That's it. We're
And
just rolling a ball. And it's what do you feel confident when you stand over it to go roll the ball? And I love the fact that I can just stand up there and go, I'm just going to focus on putting a pure roll on this ball. And that takes everything else out of the equation for me.
one more thing before I let you tell us how to get one. I'm going to make a statement. People might poo-poo this, but especially greens, slower green putters.
Mhm.
Now, at the Masters, it's not necessarily the case. You can whiff one, and because of the speed of the greens,
Yeah.
the ball's going to roll decent distance. But if you're putting on slower greens, I would contend because the ball starts getting friction from when it leaves the face if it's staying on the ground. You almost have to strike a putt more flush than you would a 7-iron, for argument's sakes, because you could hit slightly beneath the equator of a 7-iron and still get it to the green and be okay.
Right.
But if you've got 30, 40 feet with a putter and you whiff one,
Yeah.
you got 15 feet next, or whatever the case might be. And then all of a sudden, to your point, it becomes a bit more mental.
Yeah.
So I'm contending basically that striking a putt flush is more
It's very
important than anything else.
I do I completely agree with you. And I get in arguments with people all the time because I think they take advantage when you have that 1 inch, ish size putter face on most putters that it's just you get up and you hit it and you're fine. But there you need to be very consistent with where your impact location is on that ball. Always. Like, I mean, mic drop. There's nothing else that matters. And here it's forcing you in that position. And some people might say, well, that's making it harder. And I argue the opposite. I think that's if it forces you to focus on that, now that's making you easier. If you become complacent and don't think about it, you're going to miss left, right, short, long all day long.
Impact location, it reminds me of two stories. Well, first of all, in the Masters on the Amen corner coverage, we'd see everyone come through there. And Rasmus Højgaard, who can hit the thing like God, crazy. He uses this black style putter, and you can see the little pinprick mark on the face when you get a close up of how many times he struck this thing right in the middle. But then at the Masters many, many years ago in 2008, when my brother won, I'd given him a putting lesson at the start of the week. And he was out there in a practice round Tuesday, and it was slow on the first. So he's on the green and looks back in the fairway, and Ben Crenshaw is coming up, still playing that. And so I look at Trevor. I'm not on the green with him. I'm on the ropes, and I'm like, wave him up. So Crenshaw comes up, and Trevor walks to the rope and is chatting with me while Crenshaw's hitting. And so I'm like, ask him, ask Crenshaw, because I was wanting to get confirmation of what I'd said to him. So Trevor walks over to him, and I see Trevor asking, and I see Ben's face light up. And Trevor points at me. So he comes over there, and he's got that 8802, that old Wilson in his hand.
I know as you talk, yeah.
And he's got like I've got a pen. He's got a tee in his hand, and he says, so he goes, this is my putter. He goes, if I strike it there, and he touches just a little right of center with a tee, like a pinpoint, he goes, that's pretty good. He goes, if I strike it there, he goes, it's okay. If I strike it there, that's the perfect spot for the perfect roll. And he's pointing with a tee exactly to the spot. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's that precise. And he's moving the points around by millimeters. And I'm like, gee whiz, the feel of this guy's.
No wonder he was so good.
And I was like, I said to him after being like jaw dropped, I'm like, are you serious? And he goes, yeah. He goes, when I hit it here, money. So yes, Crenshaw saying if you hit it with yours, you learn to hit it here, you're going to be money.
That's right. And you feel the difference too. I mean, when you hit it right, you're like, I don't like using this analogy, but it's almost like a blade iron of putters, right?
Yeah.
When you hit it right, you know it. And then you can continuously, right, grind that in. Then it becomes pretty addictive because the ball rolling off that, you can almost hear it. It's different. And I'm just excited for more people to try it because again, I think people become very complacent on the greens and just assume, hey, I line it up, I feel my speed, I do it. Well, there's a few other variables that are going to affect your ball roll.
Yeah.
And try and minimize those to the extent that we can.
Yeah, golf is at the highest level in my experience. The instant feedback is what they work off.
Right.
All right.
Right.
This is the OG. It comes in 2 colors. Send folks to the website where they can find out more, where they can see the different options as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's spoilergolf.com, SPOILER golf.com. And right now we've got a silver OG. That stealth OG was new this year. And then coming out here in probably June, maybe early July, we have a new blade coming out. So that's going to be awesome too. We just had a lot of feedback from customers, wanted something a little more traditional looking. So, we spent the last year working on that and really excited to get that in people's hands too.
And this is in 2025 for all you podcast listeners that are coming to this later on to the party. Godspeed, man. This is good stuff. What about social media? Is there a place where they can follow you guys?
Yep. Instagram, Spoiler Golf, at Spoiler Golf. Give us a follow. Yeah, well, I'm always on there just talking about why, important things about putting. I've got putting drills on there, and then we're obviously talking about why we love the role of spoiler, OG, and our lead edge roll face. That's what we're here to do, to try and help change the face of putting.
Well, I don't think you're going to be a spoiler, but you'll be a trendsetter in putting. So congratulations. This is good stuff. Appreciate you joining us, Dan.
I appreciate your time. This was really fun. Thanks, Mark.